Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Silvio.
And I am Joseph Bigos.
Welcome to the Bigos Silvio Show, a political talk show discussing national politics and how they affect the youth and the trials and tribulations they face on a daily basis.
Absolutely, Richard. And we've got some great topics to talk about tonight. And we've got a very special guest to help us with these topics, Armen Kazanjian. Armen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well. We'll get more to Armen later. But before we get started, we'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Never gets old.
Never. Well, Richard...
So, Joe, would you like to start us off first?
Well, you don't want to forget about your book review, Richard.
Oh, the book review. I'm so sorry, Joey. Ladies and gentlemen, this week's book review is Live, Free, or Die by Sean Hannity. It's personally one of my favorite books. It is about progressivism in the modern day America and how it is very dangerous and how it could lead to the end of the Union and trouble for America. It's a wonderful read. You should pick it up.
Absolutely. Well, let's get started here. So, cancel culture. This is it's out there, and it is a form of ostracism, which it thrusts people. Yes. Who view different, like politically different from another person. It thrusts them out of a professional or a social circle, and
absolutely
they call it call-out culture.
Call-out culture, yes. And ladies and gentlemen, for those older ladies and gentlemen who watch our show, who may not be aware of cancel culture or call-out culture, as you call it, I wrote down a more family-friendly definition in layman's terms.
Let's hear it.
So, absolutely, it's a very swell definition. So, cancel culture is a system in which someone is removed from social and professional platforms, such as Facebook or even their job, and it's usually for personal beliefs, which are mainly political.
Right. And Armen, it seems to affects conservatives the most. How do you feel about that?
A lot more than you would say, like the Democrats or
liberals altogether.
Right. And I think it's really dangerous.
Absolutely.
With whether it's work or whether it's online, canceling someone or calling them out on something that they may believe is really dangerous.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It leads to intolerance in democratic society, as it systemically excludes anyone outside of their own political views.
And not to mention, it's a direct threat to the freedom of speech, the First Amendment.
Absolutely.
And in case you are not aware of what the First Amendment is entirely, we have a little nifty video to show you to explain it better. So, Ron, if we could get up the freedom of speech video, please.
The First Amendment gives Americans 5 basic freedoms: freedom of speech, press, petition, assembly, and religion. While all 5 are important, perhaps freedom of speech is talked about the most. Free speech is the cornerstone of our democracy. Although what you say can have consequences, like losing friends or a job, it gives Americans the right to express opinions without government censorship or control. And more importantly, you can't go to jail for expressing your opinion. It not only protects the speech that people like, but speech that people don't. Because when it comes to free speech, either everyone is protected or no one is at all. It allows citizens to support political movements and candidates. It gives people the power to call out government corruption and abuse. And most importantly, it empowers people to give unpopular opinions. The civil rights movement is a perfect example of free speech in action. During the 1950s and 60s, civil rights activists such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were able to use free speech as a tool to force change within society. By exercising their voice, civil rights activists were able to outlaw racial discrimination that plagued the nation. But in today's politically charged climate, some people believe the government should restrict certain speech. But thankfully, because of the First Amendment, everything from car commercials to fiery protests are protected.
Video there describing free speech and what it entails. Armen, would you like to tell us how you think freedom of speech ties together with cancel culture?
I think I'll talk about the effects of what that will do. I think it'll further divide this country like we see, out in the streets and whatnot. That's literally what this is. I want to say that's the aftermath or almost like a side effect as to what we're seeing.
Absolutely, Joey.
Absolutely. I agree completely. It amounts to so much online bullying, and you talk about inciting violence. That's exactly what the radical left with their woke cancel culture do.
Absolutely. And, for a second, I would like to focus on cancel culture in terms of politicians and nationally. We see politicians left and right being canceled for minor things.
Absolutely.
Ted Cruz right now went on a trip to Cancun, and people want to put him on a stake and burn him.
Absolutely.
Joey, I think you had some other examples?
Absolutely. So, someone we should be, looking at more, severely right now is Andrew Cuomo,
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, so, he's this guy, governor of New York, who's declaring himself, oh, I'm such a great leader. People are calling him
Got an Emmy.
Yeah, the greatest governor of all time. And his idiotic other brother, CNN anchor Chris Cuomo, they're on laughing with each other. Well, he's also being praised, in the sky from, remember, the greatest doctor ever, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Yeah.
But remember, Dr. Jill Biden comes before Fauci. Remember
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
No, but seriously. But turns out that Cuomo was lying to the American people. He was lying to members of his own party about the amount of COVID deaths within nursing homes. He was lying to people's families that died from COVID in nursing homes. He made the number that he said died from, patients with COVID that died from it in these nursing homes was significantly less than what the number actually was. It was much higher, and he lied about it. And quite frankly, declaring yourself a leader while, simultaneously, avoiding the cost of leadership by failing to take responsibility for your own policies. I mean, this could result in, obviously...
You're not considered a leader.
Exactly. He's under investigation, and this could be a criminal offense.
Absolutely. Cuomo fans out there, don't worry. He's a Democrat. He's not going to get canceled. Which, I think really speaks volumes to who the actual targets are of cancel culture. Andrew Cuomo is perhaps the biggest, or should be rather, the biggest target of cancel culture right now for all the things he has done wrong and the investigation going on right now about him. But you're not going to see that happen.
No, because...
Really, it should be... Second should be Joe Biden. And the reason why is because, I don't know if you guys watched the CNN thing that they had
The
with...
town hall?
Yes,
I did.
town hall, that's right.
I noticed some lies,
Also some racist things that the left would consider racist.
Absolutely.
He literally said. So, I mean, if it's if Trump said that, or any person on the right would say that, then...
Absolutely.
They would be canceled.
Joe Biden's been a known racist for years, though. Let's get that on the record.
Absolutely. And you know what the interesting thing is, right? What did this is the question asked. What did Ted Cruz do that was hypocritical? Nothing. He went on a trip at the wrong time. Why is his story being seen 4 times more than Andrew Cuomo, who went against his own policies, or Nancy Pelosi, who went into a hair salon after she said people shouldn't be going there, right?
Absolutely.
Or Gavin Newsom, governor of California, who's going out to all these nice places when these small businesses are begging for him to open so they can just keep their business alive.
Not to mention, to circle back to Joe Biden for a moment, his known racism. What about his comments a while back about if you don't vote for me, you ain't black? What about him not wanting his kids to be raised in a racial jungle? Why has this been covered up by the media? Why are we not talking about this?
For sure.
It is absolutely horrid that we have to, even consider that, one political party is, they're being so intolerant because they are. The Democratic Party is not how it used to be.
It's the party of intolerance. It's always been the party of intolerance.
The last true Democratic president that worked, with both parties bipartisanly, I would say is Bill Clinton. But the last real true Democrat who cared about the people and didn't just care about his reputation or to push a political agenda was JFK.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely, Joey. I'd like to take a step back now with cancel culture and discuss, how has it affected the people in Drake? It has it. What or have been the local effects of cancel culture? Armen, do you know of any personally?
So I want to say that generally our town is pretty conservative in a way, or moderate.
Yeah.
Leaning more towards the moderate side. But no, I haven't really seen anyone or know anyone that has been canceled in a way that someone in New York or anywhere else, because I feel like we're in our own little bubble.
Absolutely. So. That was very well put. Joey?
Absolutely. But you know what I do see? Let's think about the abortion debate real quick, right? So you have these, pro-choice advocates who, are in, the side of the would-be mother for her right to decide, with her own body, what's good for her, what's not good for her, right? Just supporting her right to decide, whether she should carry a fetus to term, which, all 3 of us know, it's not just a clump of cells, it is,
human being.
It starts at conception, right? But this, this argument, whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, it's not about science. It's what is true about, the individual's idea of what is good. But the Democrats don't seem to understand that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, whether it's good or not. They just seem to violate, people's opinions on the right side of the party.
Of course, when it comes to Democrats in human rights, they pick and choose which humans should have rights.
Absolutely.
That's how they see human rights.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to circle back to cancel culture and how it has affected people locally. Joey, do you know of any local cases where people have been the victim of cancel culture?
When we talk about the town of Drake, I do not know any cases of people being canceled. Like Armen said, election turnouts tend to be a little more Republican in Drake's favor for the past couple of years. So I do not know any that I can speak of.
I guess where I'm a little more involved in local politics than, you two. Personally, 3 examples right at the top of my head. John Zimini, Phil Tebow, and even Gordy Scott, they have all been the target of DeRocco's dynasty here in Drake because they refuse to play ball. They have been targeted by cancel culture, which, ultimately has failed. But right there is a perfect example for you. And, not to toot my own horn, but I feel like it has to be mentioned. Yeah, Joey?
So, I wanted to bring a question up to, both of you, and I want you to think about it and, let me know what you think. Should we be extending the First Amendment right to the private sector, seeing that this woke culture, cancel culture, has gotten so out of control? Armen, I guess we can start with you on that.
I don't see why not, Personally, I don't really know that much about the private sector in that way, but I would consider that to not really affect, that would only benefit us. It wouldn't really because it's our freedom of speech.
I agree. And I guess the only argument against people that would support that would be, well, you Republicans are so for the private sector and the government, staying the heck out of your life, but now you want them to come in. Well, we want them to come in a different way that supports our First Amendment, our constitutional amendment right.
Joey, I absolutely see your point, but don't say we, because for this, I actually think I may agree with Armen where, like you said, it would be wonderful, if we had the First Amendment within the private sector and within social media and whatnot. But then again, I also understand where Armen is coming from, in terms of let the private sector be the private sector,
right.
No government involvement. Right. So honestly, I think I saw a little more with Armen on this.
I agree. I understand completely. The thing that bothers me the most here is, when we were looking at the 2020 election, certifying these votes, for President Biden to become the next president. You saw Josh Hawley, you saw Ted Cruz, Congressman Gates, you saw all these congressmen and women and senators who were objecting to certain states, right? Well, quite frankly, they were being canceled by people saying, they were getting threats, right? They were getting called out by these liberal media networks that they need to resign, that they should just resign immediately. AOC, she's probably one of the most sensitive congresswomen I've ever seen.
Queen of safe spaces.
Accusing Ted Cruz of wanting to murder her? What are you doing, lady? Come on. But the thing about this is, and we have a quick clip that goes way back to 2000 and 2004 of Democrats objecting to certifying some states.
This is our response to people saying Republicans are being sensitive, right here.
The chair now hands to the tellers the certificate of the electors for President and Vice President of the state of Florida.
Mr. President, the objection is in writing, signed by a number of members of the House of Representatives, but not by a member of the Senate.
Mr. President, I stand for the purpose of objecting to the counting of the vote from the state of Florida as read.
Mr. President, I rise on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus to object to the 25 electoral votes from Florida.
Mr. President, thank you for your inquiry. It is in writing. It is signed by myself on behalf of my diverse constituents and the millions of Americans who have been disenfranchised by Florida's inaccurate vote count.
Is the objection signed by a senator?
Well, Mr. President, I am objecting to the idea that votes in Florida were not counted.
The clerk will report the objection.
We, a member of the House of Representatives and a United States Senator, object to the counting of the electoral votes of the state of Ohio on the ground that they were not, under all of the known circumstances, regularly given. Signed, Stephanie Tubbs Jones, State of Ohio. Barbara Boxer, State of California.
The objection today is raised because there are irregularities across this country with regard to voting. And we as a Congress have an obligation to step up to the plate and correct them.
Mr. Speaker and members, I dedicate my objection to Ohio's electoral votes to Mr. Michael Moore, the producer of the documentary 9/11.
First of all, we're here because not a single election official in Ohio has given us any explanation for the massive and widespread irregularity in the state. No explanation for the machines in Mahoning County that recorded carry votes for Bush.
Our people are dying all over the world. A lot from my state. For what reason? To bring democracy to the far corners of the world. Let's fix it here, and let's do it first thing out. Thank you very much.
They're really showing themselves to do really well. Come on, man.
Sorry about the end of that. I'm not too sure what that was about at the end. That kind of went past our producing board. I'm sorry.
Anyway,
Joey,
we
yes.
have an obligation. That's what the Congresswoman said. We have an obligation to protect the democracy. Well, how come the woke left has such an issue with us trying to protect our democracy today?
Beautifully put, Joey. That video alone highlights the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party. They're liars. That's all you can say. They are liars.
This bothers me a lot. Armen, how do you feel about this hypocrisy and this woke culture from the left?
I want to say, like, how has it not, like, reached everyone's eyes? Even if, like, you're from the left, you should definitely be, like, at least admit that, like, all right, that's pretty hypocritical, you know? When it happened, like, with, like, the Capitol, you know, with what happened there, I was like, all right, well, that's, like, not necessary. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, I can definitely, like, go on that side and be like, that wasn't really necessary. However, you know, with this, it's like, you have to admit, like, this is very hypocritical.
Absolutely. You can't deny it.
And in 2016, they did the same thing against Trump. Mm-hmm. And this was after his inauguration, there was riots in the streets. Yeah. Where have the riots been for Biden? There has not been any.
It's ridiculous. Like I said, that video alone really highlights, all the faults of the Democratic Party, and frankly, the left altogether. Like Armen said, how can you watch that? Maybe that video needs to be played widespread, because how can you watch that and not understand that your side is the
right,
side
and
of
still
hypocrites?
Believe that like you're still in the right.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that every single Democrat is bad,
no.
But what they've been doing to people, especially Black Americans, for years, is manipulate them for years.
So I wouldn't say all Democrats are bad. I would more likely say that, like, the leaders of the Democratic Party are leading their people into something that should never have been, like, established.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because we had actually, ladies and gentlemen, before the cameras were rolling, we had this discussion where I believe that, AOC and the minorities within the Democratic Party, I think that they do believe that they are, trying to bring more equal rights to minorities, but the leaders of the Democratic Party, like you said, Armen, absolutely not. They've always been the party of racists. They supported the Confederates. They created the KKK.
Not only that, sorry, I hate to cut you off,
problem.
but not only that, but like they're so easy to like drop the ball on you if you don't fit their agenda or they don't need you anymore. Like the Black Lives Matter, you don't really hear from them that much anymore.
Absolutely. And you know what the interesting about it is? We have a representative in town here. Her name's Colleen Gary. Now, she was telling us, she came on one of our episodes, and she was telling us the fact that she's a Democrat and she is pro-life, that she gets thrust out of professional circles because of it. But she's a Democrat. So they do it within their inner party.
It's, speaking of people getting thrusted out, I did want to circle back real quick to local examples of cancel culture. I feel like this had to be mentioned. So John Zimini and myself, back when this Black Lives Matter, the riots and protests first started, I went out online and vented how I do not support Black Lives Matter, the organization that is, for their hypocrisy and how they've actually failed to help the Black community.
Absolutely.
And John Zimini. Yeah, huh?
How'd that go?
Thank you for asking. That's a good transition.
Yeah.
So John Zimmerman did the same thing, and me and him went out in response, and we organized a police rolling rally in Drayton. We had over 200 cars.
I've heard of that. I think I did hear about that.
Everybody knows about it at this point. I'm kind of famous now.
Well,
not
everyone
to toot
knows
my own horn.
the one and only Richard Silvio.
Absolutely. How could you not? But the real funny thing, or not funny, I guess, the rather unfortunate thing that happened after that event, I started to receive death threats for a good week. And, that really took me by surprise, because if you know me in real life, you know I'm not a racist person. I don't have a racist bone in my
Absolutely
body.
not.
So for that to start happening, and the police actually to come to my house and sit down and drink coffee with me, and squad cars being outside my house, God forbid what the neighbors think. I don't even want to know. But the fact that had to happen, and where I'm a victim of cancel culture, which still goes on, I barely have anything to do with anybody because of it. I think it really speaks volumes on how it's targeting and affecting the youth, and it needs to stop.
So sorry.
No, you're good.
So off of that, when I got out of high school, I noticed the people that I went to high school with, I was shocked to see them come out as being a Democrat or following these movements. At the same time, it's almost like it's a trendy thing on social media. It's just so easily to follow without thinking about it. You don't really know what you're following. It's so easy to just get roped into it and not know what you're really talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely, especially where the liberals tend to control the media and apps such as TikTok that, or I like to call it the commie app, and Zuckerberg, being so liberal, they project what they want onto the youth. So when the youth see, liberals, Democrats, and they see the words equal rights, like you said, it's so easy just to jump on that bandwagon, and that's a serious problem.
Absolutely, these liberal media networks are brainwashing young kids that are
That's the only word for it.
Around our age. And then when you start seeing something that is factual from someone on the right posting something, it's fact checked.
So have you guys seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
I've heard about it.
I feel like I've heard of it.
I feel like I'm sponsoring them right now, but it literally explains what I just said was these social media platforms will basically put on your feed specific things that will make you stay on that app for as long as you can.
Absolutely.
So whatever that might be. And that's, I think, really dangerous. And I'm not really big on having government be huge and, have their arms and everything, but I do think that we need to figure that out.
And that's called The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
Yeah, The Social Dilemma.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you should go out and check that out. I know I will be after this show. It sounds very interesting.
Absolutely.
And by the way, if you'd like to get in the conversation, feel free to shoot us an email at that address that's going to pop up on your screen right there, and we will get back to you as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And, speaking of, cancel culture and, people being afraid to make their political beliefs known, I actually was able to find 2 different polls.
Oh boy, Joey and his statistics. Let's hear them.
Both of these polls came from the Cato Institute, and it's a website online. I'd be, more than happy to direct you there if you don't believe my statistics. So the first one I found was that it said 32% of people worry that their political views could harm their employment. 31% of Democrats said that. 34% of conservatives said that they are worried that their political views could get them fired or harm their career trajectory.
Armen?
I feel like it should be a lot more than that for conservatives, to be honest.
Agree.
But to go off of that, I would say that the establishment is mainly left-leaning, more tolerant for people, across the board. So in that aspect, I think conservatives would have a much tougher time getting a job if they really spoke out against that. That's probably why that's so low.
Absolutely.
34%.
I've got another one that may make you guys seem more, it may seem more accurate. So 62% of Americans, this was a different poll that was done last year in July.
Yeah.
Now, this poll said that 62% of Americans say that they have political views they're afraid to share of. 50% of strong liberals support firing or canceling people that supported President Trump.
Of course.
36% of strong conservatives said the same thing on the opposite end about Biden.
I think on both sides of the aisle, nobody should be fired for who they support, But liberals view, I'm very convinced that liberals see Trump as worse than Adolf Hitler. I don't understand why. That's completely absurd. It's not true at all. So I can see why so many liberals would support, firing Trump supporters. But like I said, nobody should be fired whatsoever for their political views. Now, I understand if you're bringing up politics in the workplace, which obviously, the workplace is for work, not to discuss politics. The same goes for school. But for them to go out, look at your social media, see what you support, and then judge whether they should hire or fire you off of that, that's wrong.
So
very wrong.
I have an example of this whole,
Sure.
So I had a conversation with a person, over last summer, someone I didn't really know much about. So this person went to the same school that I went to. So they said that they couldn't be friends with me because I supported someone who was taking away human rights, and someone of this person's descent came from immigrants, and I said, listen, are you in the United States right now? She says, yes. I said, so what are you complaining about? And I said, do your parents have jobs? She says, yes. I said, so what are you complaining about? I says, have your parents' rights been violated? This person says, no. I said, so what are you complaining about? What are you complaining about someone taking away human rights? There has been no human rights taken away
Not at all.
by the former president.
And, I think with conservatives in general, liberals seem, or even moderates, I believe, tend to view conservatives as unaccepting of other beliefs.
And they think of us as monsters.
They absolutely,
but they're the monsters.
I wanted to say, last Thanksgiving dinner, I was sitting down, there's a relative in my family, I'm not going to say who they are, just know I love you very much, who is a liberal, and I guess they weren't aware that I was a conservative, so we got to talking, and you know what they actually said to me? Oh, you just have to make sure that you're accepting of other people's beliefs. A family member said that to me.
Absolutely.
Really? Are you kidding me? So just because I'm a conservative, I'm not going to be accepting of other people's beliefs. That is absurd. Armen, have you had any experiences with family members or close friends politically?
Family, no, because we all are pretty down to earth like that, and we all agree on the same thing for the most part. I envy you. Except one family member, but it's all right. No, it's my aunt. But it doesn't matter. Yeah. But family, for friends-wise, for sure. There's been ever since after high school, it's all of a sudden everyone is coming out
Absolutely.
to believe whatever it is, and then I'm just over here okay, it's just very extremist to where you're going with that.
Coming out of the liberal closet, as
Absolutely.
I would call it.
And you know what it is, Armen and Richard, quite frankly, I had a conversation with an individual about foreign policy, and it was about Trump's foreign policy compared to Barack Obama's foreign policy. So I sat down and had a good conversation to start, and this person asked me why I felt Trump's foreign policy was much stronger. I said, well, quite frankly, Trump didn't bomb the Middle East into oblivion. And then I also mentioned how that was Trump met with Kim Jong-un, leader of North Korea, and if you remember in the Obama administration, they literally wanted to bomb us.
For some reason, though, they look at that as something that's really bad.
Right.
But however, back in the town hall with Joe Biden, he was commemorating President, the Chinese president. And,
oh my goodness!
It's right. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it.
And he said he wasn't going to call out the Uyghurs.
Exactly.
He wasn't going to condemn anything that was happening. I know this must make you upset, Richard.
Yeah, knowing me so well, like you said, that completely. I don't understand how anybody can respect the Chinese, and when I say the Chinese, I'm referring to the Chinese government, not Chinese Americans.
Right.
But for a country that's putting people in literal concentration camps, in a country that is, you can only have one child. They're telling you how many children you can have. No free speech whatsoever. They've completely decimated Hong Kong, and in their attempt to become a democracy, they are the absolute number one enemy of the United States. And the fact that we even talk about them in any type of positive light is disgusting. You are a disgusting human being if you do that.
Absolutely. And where I was going with the rest of that conversation I had, Richard, was this person I had a conversation with, it went on for a few more minutes, and then he started saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And then he started getting loud with me and saying, you're a despicable human. And I said, for what? Expressing my First Amendment right to you? And we're sitting down to have a nice conversation. So that's where I find the radical left can't seem to understand. They can't just sit down and present facts. I understand everyone has emotion, but I'm sorry, facts don't care about your feelings.
I like how you said that you don't think they realize, that they're doing it, because I actually wanted to speak about that real quick. Armen, I'm going to ask you something, okay?
Sure.
So obviously you're open, to discuss with people, who have different political beliefs. You're open to talk to them, right?
Of course.
Okay, let's say this. Let's say would you sit down with a Nazi and talk to them about political beliefs? No, right?
No.
Okay,
No.
Would you
that's
sit down?
That's exactly what I think the liberals are doing. The
Right.
liberals see us as Nazis, and they're thinking, I don't even want to hear what they have to say. Right? I think that's exactly what's happening.
I think that on both sides we think of each other as like stupid.
Yeah.
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 And that's so hard to like try and sit down and talk with, because you know that they're not going to change your mind. You're not going to change their mind. So it's like, what's the point? And now we're at the point where we have these two parties that are so divided that, what's going to come,
Absolutely.
And
they're communists to us and we're Nazis to them.
Absolutely. And I just want to drift away from the cancel culture. We'll be able to get back into the hypocrisy. I just wanted to touch on the historic statues. Now, what we were seeing over last summer, and we still tend to see, is people vandalizing, burning down Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Ulysses S. Grant. Armen, how do you feel about these statues? Should we be pulling them down, or should we be keeping them up?
I think that we should keep them up in order to remind ourselves that this is where we came from, and look at what we've accomplished afterwards.
Absolutely.
But if you hide that in a museum,
no one's going to know.
No one goes to a museum, by the way. I don't know if anyone else here,
actually, maybe Richard.
Oh, yeah. But
guilty.
I feel like the vast majority of our generation does not go to the museums.
I think it's a violation of the principles that we hold dear as Americans. Whether it is bad history or good history. If it's bad history, I am not saying I agree with it, because the bad history, I do not agree with the racism, the prejudice, the killing of innocent.
Because it hurts your feelings, and you can't just go cry in your dorm room about it.
Right.
We have to tear this down.
But you know what?
It doesn't make any sense.
As a country, we look back on these moments in previous history of where we've come and where we are today because of it.
Absolutely, Joey. I'm glad that you said, good history and bad history, because personally, that's how I separate the statues and even symbols like the Confederate flag or the swastika or whatnot. You have to separate it into good history, like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, then bad history, like General Lee and the Confederate flag. So I would like to talk about that for a little bit. Joey, how do you feel about the removal of General Lee statues and Confederate flags?
Well, you know what it is? I don't think we should just be removing these historic statues.
Yeah.
You know what I think we should not do is build more of them.
Bingo, hit it right on the head. Armen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, but like tearing down the statues, I'm not a racist because I want that up. It's because it's going to remind us to not be that again. That's why we should keep them up.
Both hitting it right on the head. Could I? Oh, Joey, yeah.
So I just wanted to go back into history real quick and remind you, the people watching this, I wanted to give you a quick history lesson.
Flashback.
So when we saw the protests of George Floyd, people, looting the streets, taking down these statues, there was 3 statues in particular that were being vandalized. Ulysses S. Grant, our 18th president, George Washington, our father of our country, our first president, Thomas Jefferson, our 3rd president. All of these men, yes, had undeniable ties to slavery, right? Washington over 300, Jefferson over 600. Grant inherited one, upon his father-in-law's death as he worked on his wife's family plantation. Now, but George Washington led the Continental Army to victory over the British. He refused to be called the king of the country. And he held together the country through 2 terms as the first president. And in his will, he freed the slaves he had upon his wife's death. Jefferson, the author of 2 of the most dearest principles we hold as Americans of religious and equal freedom, right? Grant, who, quite frankly, came from an abolitionist family, right? He freed the 1 slave he owned in 1859. He supported black enlisted army men. He led the Union Army in the Civil War to support black rights and push for, equality for them. Should we not honor the contributions of these 3 great men for this country? Should we just whitewash it, censor it? Why are we doing this? We need to take a step back and really think of who we are as Americans.
Wonderful speech there. I'm going to give you a little round of applause. That was wonderful. Very fiery. I liked it a lot. You made a lot of wonderful points.
It is sad that people have to pull down Abraham Lincoln statues. He is the great emancipator. He gave up everything, and he said he would do anything for people's rights.
Gave up his life.
His call for unity in his Gettysburg Address was a way better call than Barack Obama, was a way better call than President Biden, who likes children. I mean, he said he likes children better than people.
He did say that. Joey, mentioning, how some of our greatest historical figures, owned slaves and whatnot. Obviously, slavery is bad. Nobody is saying slavery is not bad. It's one of the most evil things, if not the most evil thing, you can do to another human being. But at the same time, what we need to understand is that the 18th century was a completely different time. It was a completely different world. And while slavery being the norm does not excuse the behavior whatsoever, we have to understand that that's just how things work.
It was.
Everybody had a slave back then. Everybody had a slave.
To, I'd say 1 to 18. The first to the 18th president had some type of involvement in slavery. That's just how these times were.
Are we going to forget about them all because of it?
Absolutely. I mean, how do you feel about this, Armen?
So to put it to you this way, there's only, I think, around 5%. I read it on an article. About 5% of people today had ties to people that owned slaves back then. Okay? Just to put that in perspective. Only 5% in this country still have ties to people who owned slaves back then. And I think Congress was talking about reparation of for black people and giving them back money that there's people that they're related to somewhat.
Yeah, that they were related to back in the 1800s.
Yeah. Yep. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and quite frankly, that's immoral.
Absolutely.
That's really bad. You shouldn't do that. But we also should understand that we should obviously recognize that slavery was bad.
Right.
But to keep reminding ourselves that that was a thing, or that we can't be better than that, or we're never going to be better than that, is that's stupid. That's dumb thinking.
Just like Morgan Freeman said, if we keep talking about it, it's still going to be around.
And like he said, let's stop talking about it. I see you as Armen. You see me as Joey. I see you as Richard. You see me as Joey. And you know what else bugs me too? When we're talking about these statutes, right? As citizens of the United States, we all are able to hold controversial opinions, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and build statutes to honor our beliefs. The First Amendment protects everyone's speech, not just the majority. But when I'm talking about building statues, I'm not talking about building statues of George Floyd. Listen, and I'm not saying that what the cops did was right. I absolutely not.
No, they should be in jail.
I am not for building a statue of a guy who has 5 felonies on his record. In 1 felony, he broke into an innocent woman's home with a young child, barreled her in the wall, almost broke her ribs, and a guy that he was breaking into their house with whipped her on the side of the head with a gun.
He also held a gun to her stomach.
Can I tell you something?
Well, hold on. Let me finish real quick.
Go ahead.
Why are we honoring people like this? Why aren't we honoring David Dorn, a black American, 77 years old? He went out on the streets after he found out that people were breaking into, some of his friends' businesses, right? And he's a retired cop. And he got killed. Why aren't we remembering people like him?
I think with the media and how they spin it is how a lot of people in our generation and a little bit older, like millennials and stuff, that's how they perceive that, or in a way, because of what the media says. They pretty much believe everything that the media says. So,
bingo.
It's media is so powerful today, and social media. It is like, and that's what the establishment is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's very well put, Armen. I mean, Richard, and now I'm not saying that George Floyd's life didn't matter. Absolutely, it mattered. And
no one deserves
those
to die.
cops should be in jail for the rest of them.
Absolutely,
the rest of their
100%.
lives. And that's why we should be funneling more money to reform these police departments to make them more fair.
Absolutely, and I think with just to go back to the removal of statues and symbols, I think this is an issue that we see more in the South, opposed to the North, West, or Northeast. And I kind of wanted to focus on the South for a minute. I know today I'm kind of full of personal anecdotes here, but I think this is important, to talk about. Last summer, I went down south in June for about 2 weeks or so to visit, relatives. So I stayed on this old plantation where my family lives, and they had a bunch of neighbors, right, on the street, and all of them were flying these big, huge Confederate flags, right? And so at first I was like,
whoa.
Okay, let's take it back a minute there, right? But then later on in the day, you know what I noticed? Half of those neighbors with the Confederate flags were black. And so I got out, and, I went up and I started a conversation with them, and I just said, why?
Do you know what flag is flying up there right now? I'd be asking that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, and I did. And they say to me, we don't get how you Northerners see it, as being racist. We see it as our Southern heritage, that we belong to the South, And so I guess in that aspect, I understand where the North is coming from, yes, it used to belong to racism, and it used to be the symbol of slavery, but... It's just, the South is not politically correct. And we're not realizing that they are perfectly okay. People of all races down south are perfectly okay with the flags and symbols.
However, you see the South tearing down their own statues.
Yeah.
So,
if a state wants to tear down their own statues and they vote for it, sure, absolutely, go ahead. But there is no federal law that says you cannot have the Confederate flag in your state flag. I'm not saying I support the flag at all, but the point is the federal government can't do anything about it. The only people who can do something about it is the people in that state. And Mississippi, I believe, voted on it, and they voted to remove the Confederate flag.
Yes.
Good for them. That's what the majority of people in Mississippi want, so be it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me bring an important point up.
Yeah.
They may vote for that and think that it should never be seen again. But usually when we do that, when we hide the history, we tend to repeat it.
Absolutely.
That's what's dangerous. It's not about, forgetting, putting all these people in the museums and whatnot, all these statues. It's more about making sure that never happens again, making sure that slavery never happens again. And you can't do that when you hide it in a museum.
Absolutely.
That's not what that's about.
Look at modern day Germany. Everywhere you go in Germany, you see memorials to the Holocaust or to Jewish people. You go to German train stations, the signs will actually say, because the train stations are so old in Germany, the signs will say, this train station took this many Jews to this concentration camp, And that's, I'm not saying that we need to be that extreme, but we need to take some tips from Germany in that aspect to where they are bolstering their negative history so that they don't forget it and they aren't allowed to repeat it, just like you said, Armen.
Right.
Absolutely. It is sad where our country is heading right now. Because, back in 2016, after President Trump won the election, I didn't know much. I wasn't very politically involved. Quite frankly, I was scared in high school to make my political views known. And honestly, I would say I was more of a Democrat. I was actually pro-choice all the way up to, I'd say, junior year. Because when people would ask me, they'd say, what do you think about this? And I would say, well, it's the woman's choice. Well, now, that's not the woman. A woman has 2 legs and 2 arms. She doesn't have 4 legs and 4 arms, right?
Right.
Absolutely. And I really wanted to know how I really viewed politically. So I researched, I read, and I see how accepting the right side of the political spectrum was for me. I talked with people, and they were so accepting to me, more accepting than the left was, because I feel like they just push a certain view on you. I just feel like they have to try to push a certain political view on you.
Personally, I think President FDR, showed it the best with the liberals, or at least modern-day liberals, where if you do not support him or you do not support modern-day liberals, you are an enemy to America. You are an evil, fascist pig who deserves to die.
But you know what people don't realize? We have so much freedom in this country.
Absolutely.
There is other countries. Saudi Arabia. Women don't get treated, they get treated like horribly over there. If you say one thing that goes against what any of the government officials there believe, you're going to get hanged for that.
Even if you compare 1950s America and women's rights to Saudi Arabia, women still had many more rights in the 1950s in America than they do in modern day Saudi Arabia. It's not to mention China or any of those countries. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
The amount of government control and the lack of human rights you see in left-wing countries.
Absolutely. I think we can, head more into the political parties now because,
yeah, absolutely.
They really don't have any intent, what it seems like lately, to really help each other.
To unify, yeah.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to bring something up real quick. I wanted to talk about the impeachment. Now, this had
one or two.
This had nothing to do with Trump. You know what this had to do with? Silencing American people's voice. Because they know that that if Trump runs again, millions of Americans are going to vote for him.
I think it does have to do with Trump.
Yes, in a way
because
it does too.
They don't want him back.
No, and they're fed up on him. When we looked back at 2008, the Republican Party resided over John McCain. When we looked at 2012, the Republican Party sided over Mitt Romney, who, I know you and I don't really, like him too much. I don't know about you,
interesting human being.
But now it seems like even though Trump's out of office, at least for the next maybe years, it's going to still reside over Trump because the Democrats can't seem to get over him. And you know what I had to say about this impeachment? I have two words: patriotically and peacefully. Those two words don't incite violence.
Not at all.
You know what it does? What did Trump do? I asked myself this question, and people that say, well, how do you feel he should be held responsible for this? And I say, there's only one thing he's responsible for. His constant claims of this was a landslide win for him. Clearly it was not. Clearly he raised the tension.
Right.
But wait, let's take it back a second. What about Barack Obama? For months, Barack Obama claimed that the police were systemically racist. And then you had a Black Lives Matter supporter shoot 6 Dallas, Texas cops. What is Obama responsible for? He's responsible for stirring the tension. Bernie Sanders, for years on end, Bernie Sanders said, Republicans are having people die for lack of health care, right? And then you had a Bernie Sanders supporter go and shoot up a bunch of congressmen and women, including Steve Scalise, who almost died from this. What is Bernie Sanders responsible for? Stirring up the tension. Should we impeach the former President Barack Obama? Should we make Bernie Sanders resign from the Senate? Why is this hypocritical? Do people not read this stuff? Do people not understand this?
People don't care, Joey, and I think that's where it lies. People don't care. They don't want to know facts that are going to hurt their own side. And the modern day disdain you see between the two parties, it's unlike it's ever been before, I'm sure I watch a lot of old TV shows.
Absolutely.
I was watching a 1950s game show called What's My Line, where basically, long story short, the panelists have to guess what the people do for a living, okay? And do you know who they had on together? The heads of the Democratic and Republican parties together. They laughed. They had a wonderful time. They got along. Can you imagine that happening today?
No.
No. Richard, the type of character you are is you're very 1950s like. Yes. And I'm going to be honest with you, I wish I was in that time. I wish I was in the times of Dwight Eisenhower being president. I wish I was in the times of JFK being president, because these times, I felt these politicians didn't just care about their reputation, they truly cared about the American people.
Don't wish that. Wish you can do it better.
Absolutely.
Make this decade better. You know what I mean?
But how
don't
can
think
we
in
make it better?
Past. Think of the future.
How can we make this better? How can we do that as a country? How can we truly unite?
You got to stop pointing fingers at each other. As much as this is awesome, don't forget about the other side.
Absolutely.
Definitely understand where they're coming from, and definitely understand their leaders, because their leaders are they're dangerous and very smart, where they manipulate their party so easily. to thinking in one thing or another.
Absolutely.
So we have to stop pointing fingers at each other. That's the first thing.
I think that's a wonderful point, and I agree with you completely. You know what else I think it is? Social media. I think that you started to see the disdain and the hatred towards each other on social media, because when you are behind a screen, you are much more likely to take a crack shot at somebody than you are in person.
Because you don't want to face it in person. And this is why it seems like there's so much that goes on social media. People just don't want to see each other in person anymore. They just want to start arguments on.
Right.
That's why I say to people, if you have a problem with me.
I think it builds up.
Absolutely.
On social media, and then they take it out to the streets.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that's not how that should go at all,
And we're not saying, in the times of widespread newspapers that there weren't biased newspapers. Of course there were. There's always been fake news. But I absolutely agree with you where it builds up on social media. Social media amplifies extremist beliefs because people are reading those. They're saying, oh my gosh, what's going on? They're sharing it with everybody. People are liking it. People are disliking it. And that's where it starts.
100%.
Absolutely. And I Obama called for, in his inaugural address, he called for unity. Trump did the same thing. I felt like,
I think every president did.
I feel like but you know what we're missing? President Biden, circled back. Wow, I sound like his press secretary. Remember, where am I circling back to? Because there's nowhere, because she's all out of her options.
Exactly.
Because that's...
Exactly.
But,
Anyways.
So, I feel like, unity came best with Abraham Lincoln. Yep. He really, truly united a country together that was falling apart.
Yeah.
I mean, and he united Black Americans together. He united everyone together. And if, President Biden, who quoted saying he was going to do the same thing, I don't feel like he's done that. You know what I feel like he's done? I feel like he's just made executive orders that suit himself and his own party.
40 plus executive orders.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's and I understand that he just got in office. Who knows? Maybe things will change. I hope things do change. But the fact of the matter is, like you said, 40 plus executive orders. No other president has done that before. It speaks volumes about his character. It really, really does.
Absolutely. And you know what, the other thing, I don't know if you guys remember, but Trump, before he left, he pressed for that 2000 stimulus check.
Yeah.
Now, Biden said the same thing. Now he comes into office and now it's $1,400. So is he lying to the American people? He also said that there was no vaccines when he came into the office. The first vaccine was distributed on December 14th. That's more than a month before he came into office.
He was like one of the first people to get it.
Is he a liar? Does he forget? I guess we'll never know.
I respect people that support, the president, but you need to respect me on who I support. You need to respect other people.
I think a lot of what we're doing right now is we're trying to play their game to the fact that I'll see on social media sometimes, not my president. Biden's not my president. Trump's still my president. He's your president for 4 years. Just deal with it. Suck it up. Don't be like them, because they are not who we should be, or who we should lead example by. Leading example is the biggest thing I go by. Is you got to lead by example. If you want to do it right, you got to do it.
Absolutely.
We have to look
and
at the next
show
4
people
years.
that this is, you're able to do this.
And I think that all three of us can agree that Democrats didn't accept Trump's election for 4 years.
They didn't.
But I think we can all agree that we've made it clear that Joe Biden is our president.
Absolutely, he is. Whether he's a good president or not, he is our president.
Absolutely.
100%.
And another thing that I wanted to mention too, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I'm just getting to it now. There's been a post that goes around on social media, and it's posts like this that truly bother me. And the post reads something like, it says that you don't want same-sex couples to be able to adopt a child. How pro-life are you? That argument has nothing to do with being pro-life. I don't know about you, and I don't know about you either, Armen, but for me as a conservative, as being a pro-life advocate, I support same-sex couples adopting a child, because then the more kids that are being adopted, the more kids that have a home to go to.
So what I do like to see natural birth than to have them just not have it at all. Abort a baby, right? But I don't have a dog in that fight. You know what I mean? I'm a man, so I don't really
But you know what?
But
That's
at
not
the
the way
same
you
time,
should look at it, because you deserve to have a say just as much as someone else.
Of course,
does.
I know, but I just don't really have that kind of argument there.
Right.
As much as like I agree with you, like I am more pro-life than I am like pro-choice.
Absolutely.
But I just don't have that dog in the fight.
Absolutely.
So I
Now,
can't really
Richard,
That's respectable.
How do you feel about that? People, posting things like that.
You know-
How does it make you feel?
I think posting things like that is part of the problem, a major part of the problem. You can't compare apples to oranges. That can, and when you make those illogical fallacies, about things that have nothing to do with each other, you're only going to make people feel uneducated. You're going to make people feel like they have no idea what's going on, and you're only going to create more division. And that's the last thing we need right now in this country.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. Armen, thank you for coming on and talking with us tonight.
It's been a pleasure, boys.
And before we end here, Richard, I think we'd like to share about our upcoming special that we have.
Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen. On March, I believe we decided on the 12th, we have the 10th episode extravaganza of the Bigos Silvio show. It is going to be a live event. We're going to have call-ins. We're going to have emails. We're going to be ranking the presidents, at least the most notable ones.
Absolutely. I'm going to be bringing in my laptop. We're going to be using Tier Maker to rank what in our opinion in explaining why we rank the president the way we rank them. And we're going to be live, and after a certain amount of time, I believe after about 25 minutes of the show, we're going to allow the phones to open so you can call in, and if you disagree with us, you can
let us know respectfully.
Let us know. But with that being said, thank you again, Armen, for coming on. And I'm Joey Bigos.
I'm Richard Silvio.
And this has been the Bigos Silvio Show.
Have a wonderful night.
Ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.